Hi, Vinnie Fisher here from Beyond Your Shadow, and I want to spend some time with you today talking about the shadow a leader casts on the organization and what are the implications of that shadow. And then I'd like to give you 7 tips on how to properly identify, clearly understand the shadow, and ways to effectively address the both good and bad parts, and maybe not so good parts of the shadow. So first, I'd love to start here. What do we mean when we say the shadow of the leader? So I'm a really big John Maxwell fan. I've been personally mentored by him recently and have considered him a mentor for a long time because of the books and all the materials that I've been able to bring into my leadership style. And thank you, John, and all the things you've done for me and our organization. And one of the things that John has really imparted upon me is this idea of the privilege that comes along with leading others, and what really is that privilege. And that whole privilege is designed around the idea of influencing others. And so leadership is a specific role. Regardless of what role you have in your company, you can bring in leadership mindset into that organization, your organization, as specifically even within your department if the entire thing doesn't roll up to you. But today I want to talk about the shadow. You know, coming from the perspective that you as a leader and you have this shadow. So let's define it a little bit. The shadow is really influence. It's your footprint on the organization. So when I think about me and the organizations that I've had the privilege to build, I have a large personality. I tend to make quick, hopefully in most cases, good decisions. And I can run fast, highly creative, love to innovate. It's just the style leader I am. But interestingly, I absolutely love people. I love encouraging them. I love equipping them. And so because of that, I can cast a pretty large shadow on our organization. And some of it in such an amazing way that because my larger than life personality, I can really pour into people. I can find time to use words that are encouraging, kind, and uplifting, and equipping. I can also be hard driven for myself and drive the company really hard. And so when you've got that kind of personality, you can tend to pull a lot more levers than maybe you should. And so over time, a leader can really have an amazing impact on an organization. And depending on how you build your team, that impact, that influence can also have some unintended consequences where the organization's held back because of your influence. And so I've discovered this in my own companies, and now with years of working with others and being a growth strategist and someone who works with other businesses in addition to my own, I have noticed a trend. And that's why we have really dove into this issue of the shadow, about the leader's influence and the organization's ability to grow beyond that influence, what we call the shadow. And so how does it play out? And what does it look like? You know, I was sick not too long ago, a few years back. And when I look at how we've implemented leadership development in our company and have intentionally trained up young leaders and not so young leaders with a mindset of multiplication, that he or she is better equipped to do a position than either the existing leader or myself. And we really have worked at that for a number of years. And one of our companies, Fully Accountable, has masterfully benefited from expanded leadership. And I was sick and I had to step away in my role as the CEO of that company. I was gone for over 60 days. Not only did our organization survive, but I would argue with great humility that we thrived. We practice a principle within the organization called the 70% rule. Does someone have a 70% of the ability, the attitude, and the willingness of effort to do the role? And can we give that person the remainder of the room, the 30%, to grow? See, what I've learned about leaders is that shadow is our strong influence, as we can tend to also, by accident, lord over and micromanage our people such that they wait for us to make decisions. Have you ever felt like you're making all the decisions in the organization and everyone's waiting for you to make them, but you have capable people and they're not making those decisions? Well, I would challenge you that you have a shadow problem. And so here are some things that I've learned and some tips that I want to help you with in dealing with the shadow. And so one, as you hear people in the marketplace talk about vision and mission and some clarity around that, and also values. We wrote a book a number of years back called The CEO's Mindset. And in there, I laid out a direct plan about how to craft out the vision for the organization. And how can you then empower team members to be on mission with you to accomplish the goals and objectives of the organization. And in doing all that, I discovered that the person in charge of vision is the one who has it. And that doesn't always mean me. There could be other people casting some vision within our organization. But I definitely noticed that people with authority and leadership usually are the best positioned for casting vision. So I discovered that my job is to not only look around the corner to get us situated for the year, next year, and a few years down the road, but what is it going to look like where we're there? And then have I effectively communicated, which is going to be my second point in a second here, the vision of the company in such a way that I get people excited about their role in the mission of what we're going to do. And so at Fully Accountable, we set out to change the lives of people within 10,000 companies, where we can help them double their profit margin and really deliver more of the products and services they're intended to deliver to their customers. So exciting. That company is well on its way to its mission. And I would argue that one of the reasons is because we clearly, effectively communicated vision and mission. The other thing we did is discovered that there is a value set within the culture of a company. And when it's really dominated by the person who has the largest shadow on it, other people's ability to embrace mission or embrace company culture can be diminished. So what we did is we set out really clearly to effectively define those values. And I would encourage you to go look at that company and the stuff we wrote about that and really drive in those exercises on how to do it. The second thing I talked about is effective communication. You know, if you cannot clearly, effectively communicate to your people, it's funny how I stumbled on those words, you're going to really have a challenge in exponential growth. You're also going to have a challenge with people wondering what you're really saying versus what you are saying. And that's a problem. And I'd say that one of the issues is people end up having the wrong expectations if you're not an effective communicator. And so in order to address the influence of the leader, I think you have to develop a pattern for yourself and other leaders of how to effectively communicate goals, aspirations, recast vision on a regular basis, check in on the pulse of the company. Are we on mission? These are all the critical elements of embracing leadership as a role. And here's the amazing thing. The more you do that, the more you're going to find out that the depth of the organization is really a lot stronger than just your influence on it. You know, I don't think you can have an effective organization with effective leadership if you don't eat your own dog food. And what do I mean by that? I can give you all these examples and all this advice, but if I'm not living out these things, the values of our company, clearly stating out vision, effectively communicating, encouraging and equipping our people, then they're not going to respect that. They're not even going to see it. And so you better be living it right on the ground. And so I'd say one of the best things about our organizations and the organizations that I've seen are highly impactful are the ones that our leaders are leading by words, but mostly by example. You know, I think about my kids and I always think when, something for me that's really important in my life is how I've not only accepted and embraced a faith in Christ, but I've lived it. I've lived it in my home, I've lived it in my workplace, I've lived it in the marketplace as a total. And what my kids are seeing is they're catching it. They're not being taught it. And if they're not me saying the words, they're watching me live it out, being intentional in building that relationship. And I think I take that exact same modeling and bring it to work. I live out our values. I care more about character because character ultimately defines destiny. I care about all of the core value sets of living them in our organization. And when I stumble, I have to be quick to repent and seek reconciliation among our people. And so that's my next tip is, are you regularly seeking feedback? And are you dealing with that and accepting some of the feedback in such a way that you're embracing change within the organization? So, if we discover that I'm not the best person to lead a project, and I'm usually not, by the way, then we want to quickly identify who is. And then I also want to seek feedback. Is what we're doing working? Are you willing to listen to your people? See, this is, I hope you've made it this far, because this is a secret weapon. When I found myself getting better at seeking feedback from our people, from our customers, from anyone who might provide critique, amazing things happened. One, I learned to listen and not be defensive and try to defend why we made a decision. But listen, because people honestly want to help. And so when I started giving that authority to our people, I noticed how they stepped into a bigger role. They wanted to improve areas of the company. And that's such a big deal. I don't know how to say that more than just that. It's a gigantic deal. The next point about dealing with your shadow is how to build in mentorship and development within the company. These are two shining star things that we did at Fully Accountable and continue to do to this day. As a side note, I this year stepped down as the CEO of that company and actually promoted our COO, Rachel, into that role. And she's amazing and dynamic. And this is back to that earlier principle of eating our own dog food. If I'm going to build leaders, I'm gonna have to take risk. And I don't consider it very risky what I did with Rachel, but because she's really embraced the culture of leadership, and she is doing something in this example that's powerful. She's continuing to develop herself, and she sits under my mentorship. Well, what's even beautiful about that is we've taken that exact attitude all the way across our company. So now we have mentor programs where we're mentoring people in their roles so that they can see a bigger part of where they can play in the company and how can they be missionally minded and have a bigger role in the company. And then development, not only development within structure and organization and operations, which Rachel is amazing at, but development of expertise in leadership, giving our people at-bats to lead well. This has led to countless contribution from our people to each other. Actually, we invented something about this feedback loop that came out of these programs. And it's the way we provide each other with a little bit of love peer-to-peer. And it's at Fully Accountable, we actually have a feedback environment where we can provide daily feedback, and it's shared with everyone within the company. And I think you see a lot of praise and affirmation, encouragement, thankfulness, and gratefulness. One, because it's modeled by me, and I believe that strongly. Two, because the rest of our leadership team does it too, and we're quick to use our words. And mentorship and development have developed these deeper relationships that allow for us to have this. And then I think all of this in my last two tips can be completely undermined if you don't have a level of integrity in leadership and accountability to the organization for the responsibility of being the custodian of that integrity. And so what do I mean by that? Studies have been done, and John Maxwell led one of them, about what was the #1 trait of successful leaders. And in the top 5, in everyone's response was integrity. But in like 70-something% of the respondents, the first trait was integrity. It's such a big deal in how you lead. And if your people cannot see you being clear and honest about what you honestly believe. And all of us are going to believe and trust in different things, but the importance of embracing that and living it out with your people is so important. And then, are your leaders growing in such a way that they can hold each other accountable, including you and me, to allow for and embrace that kind of growth in your company? Here's the thing. If you look at these 7 tips I've given you today, you're going to see a bigger opportunity to grow up leadership on your team. And that growth of leadership, that exponential growth and multiplication of leaders is what truly allows for expansion. What truly allows for organizations to have a real shot at legacy type growth, leaders in multiplication, and that spreading out and making the company everybody's, not just yours, is what leads to something special. Nobody builds something special alone. And if that's true, then what are you doing to invest in multiplication through your leaders? I hope you enjoyed this lesson on the shadow and what are some ways to address the shadow you cast within the organization. Love to hear from you, some feedback, some things you might want to hear from us in the future, and pay attention to our stuff. Subscribe, and we really look forward to your leadership journey.